like to share with you how a simple interaction on Facebook has unfolded into a story about history, cultural differences, controversy, and dedication. I've used this music book for years to teach. Kerstin Wartberg arranged music for 3 violins, and I love the arrangements in this book. So imagine my surprise when Kerstin, who I never met before, posted on my Facebook page. I had to find out who she was, and being in the internet age, I was able to quickly determine that she is the first German to introduce the Suzuki method to Germany. This was cool. I had to interview her, and she agreed. And so the story unfolds. We start our journey in Germany. Germany has been the center of music history for hundreds of years. Composers such as Bach, Handel, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, Strauss, just to name a few, all come from Germany, a country just a little bit smaller than the state of Montana. As you can imagine, with this much music being produced in one small country, that many generations of violin teachers and violin teachers who composed music to teach their violin students have cropped out of Germany. Composers such as Wolfart, Seitz, Schradiak, Reading, just to name a few. And this is Kerstin Wartberg's background. We now travel to Japan. Dr. Suzuki was born one of 12 children. He was surrounded by violins his entire life. His father owned the largest violin-making factory in the world at that time. It wasn't until he was a teen that he heard a recording of Misha Elman performing where he was swept away by the sound of the instrument. He never fully realized that that sound could come out of these instruments that he's been surrounded by all his life. He's so taken with this, he dedicates himself to the study of the violin. And where do you think he went to study? Germany. While he's in Germany, he meets Waltraud, a lovely soprano who becomes his wife. And she is his rock for the rest of his life. He also spends many evenings performing music with his friends, musical soirees. One of those friends being an amateur violinist, Albert Einstein. But the most important thing that happens when he's in Germany, he has this epiphanal moment, which seems ludicrous to us because he's an adult, he's trying to learn how to speak German. And his epiphanal moment is, by golly, German children speak German, and Japanese children speak Japanese. Well, this is logic to us. So what was his aha moment? In Dr. Suzuki's own words, music is the language of the spirit. Music is the language. So why not adopt what it takes to learn a language to learning music? Okay, German children learn German, Japanese children learn Japanese, musical children learn music. Why not? There starts his lifelong journey of studying the environment of how children learn their native language and how they learn it so naturally. And he's adopting this to how to study an instrument and how to be a musician. And in that study of all the different environmental aspects, and there are many, one becomes extremely controversial. And what is the controversy? How do children learn to speak? Do you give them a book? Do you say, here, read this, now speak? No. They learn to speak first, and they learn to read later. By golly, this is not how you learn how to play the violin in Germany. You learn by reading the books. Dr. Suzuki says, no, you learn to play first, then you learn to read. This particular book was one of many that Kerstin wrote to introduce her violin students how to read music, which really sounds backwards to the Germans. And I myself have written the fingerboard workbook series just to teach children, or any violin student for that matter, this is the note, this is where it is on the violin. And that's a big distinction about the Suzuki method. Suzuki teachers teach musicality, and they teach instruments. They teach how to play your instrument. That is the Suzuki method. And it's up to each individual teacher to address each individual student and their needs to teach them how to read music. But reading music is not the Suzuki method. So what is the Suzuki method? It's a way to nurture people to speak the musical language. And for the first time in history, Dr. Suzuki is producing violin students at the ages of 2, 3, and 4. This is unheard of. I myself could not study the violin until I was 8 years old, because violin teachers did not take you until you were 8 years old, a certain point in development. So what Dr. Suzuki set apart was groundbreaking. Okay, so we get the picture, we have German culture, we have what Dr. Suzuki is about, and we have Kerstin, who is enamored with the Suzuki method living in Germany. She's unable to acquire work. She's had many job offers. Just as long as you don't use that Suzuki stuff, that's not fit for German. That's just not fit. It's written in documents. This is not fit for German education. The Germans call it the parrot method. They call it illiteracy. This is Nazism. They use even that word. Dr. Suzuki being very fond of German culture, his wife obviously from Germany, and Kerstin form a very tight bond, and they decide to focus on two main things. They turn to publications because they realize the Germans need to have things written in books. And so they try to produce what the Suzuki method is on paper. And in Kerstin's interview, she's going to go in depth about all of the different publications and how they came to be in the background behind them. And they also choose to focus on teacher training, so that she's not the only teacher, and they have more teachers to spread the love of the Suzuki method in German cultural society. Her story is fascinating. Enjoy the interview. I particularly want to point out two things about her interview. One is Dr. Suzuki knew that she was going to be facing a very tough crowd, and he trained her to be strong and resolved and dedicated with the simple use of a chopstick, and you'll get to read that story in the interview. Also, Kerstin is going to be releasing some new publications coming this fall, and she would like to have your assistance and help in picking out names for these publications. So there will be a way for you to communicate with us your name suggestions. So my friends, this is how a simple interaction on Facebook has turned into a story about history, cultural differences, controversy,